This is really important. I had a very, very, very good meeting, total unanimity with all the European leaders. We'll talk about it later. Thank you.
Well, we're going to cross then to Kyiv now, talk to our correspondent who joins us from there, Gulliver Cragg. Gulliver, we've had now then the US putting its forces on alert. We've had the US and the UK starting to pull out the families, some staff as well from their embassies in Kyiv. The rest of the Europeans, they're kind of in more of a wait-and-see mode. I mean, how is this all going down there in Kyiv?
Well, the Ukrainian leadership is basically very pleased with the international support that it's getting, military aid being sent from Britain and the US in particular, and this decision to put forces on standby is something that Kyiv welcomes. But what Kyiv is not so happy about is the rhetoric. Some of the statements that have been made by American leaders and by the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson saying that Ukraine could be a new Chechnya, they have clearly said that they find that to be a little bit excessive and potentially even playing into Putin's hands. In particular, the decision by the United States and Britain to withdraw a significant portion of their embassy staff, that was met with official declarations from the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry saying that they thought that that was premature, and noting that other countries, the countries of the European Union in particular, had not felt it necessary to take such a step. The Ukrainian leadership is very keen to avoid panic in the country. They think that that would be damaging to the economy. And also, I think that they think that it is genuinely not necessary to panic, because Ukrainian military analysts and geopolitical analysts still think that despite the huge amount of saber rattling in terms of the Russian forces on the other side of the border, they don't think that Russia's action against Ukraine is most likely to come in the form of a full-scale invasion. They're much more worried about cyber attacks or about a potential escalation in the Donbass, the eastern region of Ukraine, part of which is occupied by forces controlled by Russia and has been since 2014. The war there is, of course, still rumbling on.
So, Gulliver, that's the reaction from officials. What about when you actually talk to people on the streets, if you like?
I think the Ukrainians are pretty divided and not sure who to believe. You speak to people who just say, absolutely, I don't believe it, I don't think it's going to happen. And then there are other people, and particularly people are beginning to post messages on social media saying that they're really beginning to get quite afraid. It's perhaps worth bearing in mind that the Ukrainian government is not hugely popular. Although Volodymyr Zelensky was elected with 73% of the vote in 2019, recent opinion polls suggest that nearly 2/3 of Ukrainians think that the country is heading in the wrong direction. They don't mean that they think it should be heading back towards Russia. The pro-Russian tendency is very much in the minority in Ukraine, and more than half of Ukrainians have actually said that they would resist any form of Russian aggression or invasion of the country. If it happened in their town or village, then they would actively take part in the resistance. But all the same, they haven't got a huge amount of confidence in their leadership, and so some people are beginning to wonder whether or not it's the Americans, who seem to be more worried than the Ukrainian government, that they should be listening to more than their own leaders.
Gulliver, thanks very much. Gulliver Cragg there, our correspondent, talking to us from Kyiv.